Hello, all the crazy people out there. My name is Michael. I like wizards and dragons and making games, and as of this morning, the 21st of May, 2026, GameMaker LTS 2026 has come out. So, for those who don't know what this is, LTS is, depending on who you ask, either long-term stable or long-term support. This is a version of GameMaker which is hopefully fairly bug-free, is not going to contain any weird and surprising crashes or other unexpected behaviors. Some of you might remember LTS 2022 from a couple of years ago, which was another one of these. It was a version of GameMaker, which if you were working on a long-term project, a commercial project, a project which you didn't want to have to, like, worry about new bugs creeping in whenever GameMaker updated, LTS 2022 was a version of GameMaker which was hopefully bug-free enough and did not change except for periodic, like, console specification updates and that kind of thing. And LTS 2026 is going to be much the same thing. Although it's also a little bit more, because there have also been some structural changes to the way that GameMaker works internally, which will hopefully allow future versions to build on this without any, like, major disruptions. Anyway, I think GameMaker LTS 2026 is going to be a little bit more interesting for most people than LTS 22 because this is also sort of a crossroads for GameMaker. So those of you who have been around for a while might remember things like the transition between GameMaker 7 and 8, the transition between GameMaker 8 and GameMaker HTML5, which nobody used, so it was really the transition between GameMaker 8 and GameMaker Studio 1, the transition between GameMaker Studio 1 and GameMaker Studio 2. And this is kind of the next version of that. So GameMaker LTS 2026 is the final version of the current runtime of GameMaker, so you can basically think of it as the final GameMaker Studio 2 update. Yes, Russell, I know that it's not called GameMaker Studio 2 anymore, just smile and nod. Anyway, after this, pretty much all GameMaker development effort will shift to the future GameMaker runtime, GMRT, which I'm not really going to get into today, but you can think of it as like a complete rewrite of GameMaker pretty much from the ground up. And LTS 2026 is the final version of the current version of GameMaker. So I'm not going to do a games from scratch and spend 15 minutes reading just like patch notes. You can all read the contents of this update blog if you'd like. I will have it linked down in the description of the video. I will say that quite a few of the new additions since the previous LTS version, things like the particle editor or things like the debug overlay, I have made individual YouTube videos on, and you can go and watch them if you'd like. I think what most of you are interested in is going to be the section that says download LTS 2026 here, and this is going to bring us to the download page. So at the top of the page, we can download the LTS 2026 for Windows, for Mac, or for Linux. The Linux version says beta next to it. And the reason for that is that while it is the same version of the software as the Windows and Mac versions, Linux users, just be honest with yourselves, you know this is true. Sometimes weird things happen in your operating system, and Yo-Yo Games doesn't want to make any, like, hard commitments to the Linux version of GameMaker being as bug-free as the Windows and Mac versions of GameMaker. But it is the same version of the software. You're not, like, missing any features or bug fixes or anything, hopefully. So you can just go and download that. That is going to download the installer. And that's going to take a moment to download. So when we're done with that, we can just go and run the installer. And GameMaker LTS 2026 is going to install. It's not going to overwrite any of the previous versions of GameMaker you had installed, but it will install itself as, for all intents and purposes, a new program. So if you have a monthly, or if you have a beta, or even if you have LTS 22 installed, this will not uninstall those. It will install itself as a completely separate product. I'm going to go and wait for this installer to unpack. And this is a nice looking splash screen, I have to say. So we can go and click I agree to the license agreement without actually reading it. We can go and click through the installer. Again, it will install itself as a separate program in the programs directory. We can just wait for this to do its thing. That didn't take too long. And when we click finish, we can just sit back and wait for the IDE to actually install. So if you're using the Steam version of GameMaker, and let me just let this go through its first time setup, it will download and install the runtimes to go with the LTS 26 IDE, which will take a moment depending on things like the speed of your internet connection. But the Steam version of GameMaker, so currently, and I don't know if this is going to change at any point, but if you do prefer to use GameMaker through Steam, you can access LTS 2026 through Steam. It is not going to be like a separate product page or anything. At least it's not at the moment a separate product page. But what you have to do is go into the properties on the software in Steam, go to game versions and betas, and instead of being on the default public version, which is going to be 2024.14. whatever, you will want to select LTS 2026 as the beta version. I don't know if at some point in the future, like, LTS 26 is going to be promoted to, like, just the main branch of the Steam version. I kind of assume that it will be. I feel like somebody probably asked Russell about that during screaming about GameMaker last week, but I can't remember what he said. You also can go back to things like LTS 22 or older versions through Steam if you'd like to do that for whatever reason. I am not going to do that. I'm just going to go and use the standalone version. So there's a couple things you'll notice about this is that because this is a new installation, any like recent projects that you might have in the regular IDE, they won't be here. You will not be logged in. You will have to sign into your GameMaker account and or your Opera account like from scratch. And I'm just going to go and do that. Hopefully SSO will make that a quick and painless process. Yeah. We can just sign into GameMaker like that. And once it connects, we have signed in successfully. Something else you probably want to do is go and configure your settings. So because this is a new installation, all of your preferences will be erased. And you can either go through here one by one through all of the preferences and you can set them yourself, which, if we're being honest with ourselves, you probably don't want to do because there are so many of them. But if you do go and down to the bottom here, click the Import Preferences button, this will open up a little file finder which will allow you to select a local settings.json, which is where the preferences are stored in like the regular version of GameMaker. And if you're signed in, the default folder that opens up when you click that button will be for the like your login on the monthly version of GameMaker. And you can just select local settings.json there, and that'll ask us if you want to import settings. Yes, please. If you're not signed in, it will go to the default user folder, unknown user _ unknown user ID, and you can select your local settings from there if you'd like. But if you're signed in, you might as well just use the version on your user folder. You'll notice that, for example, the paths that I have set were updated. I do have all of my GameMaker paths set to a separate hard drive instead of my main drive. There's some other things in here, for example, GMRT settings, if you have any of that set up. Things like the Code Editor 2 settings, if you have CE2 configured. Things like Feather, if you have any like custom message like settings in here. So because we can't have nice things like a minute after I finish recording this, I started seeing reports that not all of the preferences are actually imported when you click the Import Preferences button, so good job, GameMaker. So things like your recent project list and some other miscellaneous stuff that you can configure in GameMaker, if that doesn't get imported, what you can do is all the other stuff in this user folder, or at least most of the other stuff in this user folder that pops up when you click the Import Preferences button, not just the local settings.json, you can manually go out of your way to copy and paste this stuff from the GameMaker preferences of whatever your previous version was to the preferences folder in LTS. So on Windows, that is going to be, if you go to your user folder, whatever that happens to be, app data, and to get to the app data, you will need to have hidden files and folders visible. I believe I can go and in Windows 11 down here in the View tab, View Hidden Items. If you go into Roaming, if you go down to GameMaker Studio 2, this is that folder that pops up, and you can go into whatever your user folder is, and you can copy whatever you want. So we'll just go and grab everything. If you back out a couple of levels, and if you go to the GameMaker Studio 2 -LTS 2026 folder, you can go and replace all of this with the old contents of your old user file, and that's going to take a moment to copy over, because there's a lot of things apparently, because I have a lot of like layout files for a bunch of different like tutorial projects and whatnot. All right, that took a while, and now if I go and say restart GameMaker, restart the LTS IDE. If I come back, I should have not just the settings that were to be found in preferences, but also, for example, all of my recent projects and everything else that was not stored in that individual file. I don't know if it was a deliberate choice on the part of Yo-Yo Games to not import that stuff, because as you saw there, it took like probably 2 or 3 minutes for me to copy all those files over, and having the user sitting there and waiting while the import button goes might not be preferable. But in any case, here we are. If you are not using Windows, I don't know off the top of my head where GameMaker will store its preferences. I assume it's in one of the like .config folders in the home directory on Linux and whatnot. But it should be whatever the folder that pops up when you click the import preferences button is, and you can go and just navigate to that folder. You can also copy and paste the address out of the address bar in Windows Explorer if you don't want to have to navigate to this folder on your own. But if you're on Mac or Linux, that should be where all this is stored, and if you want to copy over your settings, then you can do that. All right. Thanks for making this straightforward, GameMaker. Back to the video. At one point, I did have a custom background set, but I forget exactly when that got erased. I think that was when I had to like reinstall Windows a couple of years ago, and I never bothered to reset it. Anyway, let's get out of there. We can go and open up a project. For example, somewhere in here is going to be Wizarducks Hat, which is one of the games that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. Where is it? Up here. There we go. So that's going to open up, and here we are. Something you might want to do, by the way, is just generally good advice whenever you update a version of GameMaker is if you haven't made a commit in source control, you probably might want to consider making a commit in source control. And that's just so that if anything does blow up, and I don't expect anything to blow up when updating to the LTS version of GameMaker, unless you're coming from like a really old version. But just in case anything does blow up, make a commit so that you have an easy point to roll back to if you need to like fix anything. But other than that, this is going to basically be the same version of GameMaker that we had before. I was previously working on Wizarducks and the Lost Hat in one of the very recent beta versions, so there shouldn't be any major differences between that and LTS 26. Alright, that took a minute to start up. But here we are. This is Wizarducks and the Lost Hat. There's a... It's not like it's suddenly gonna like crash on load or anything like that. That's nice. Alright, so I don't think I really need to dedicate too much more time to that. There's not, like, a whole lot more to say about this, because, again, unless you are updating from a really old version of GameMaker, in which case you might want to, go and read the blog post so that you can get caught up to what the major new additions are. One thing that I will address, though, because I have seen people being confused about this, is, the situation with the licenses. So, for LTS 2026, the current GameMaker license that you have should be good for that until the end of time. And unless something major changes in the future, LTS 2026 will be the version of GameMaker that you can and arguably should use for quite a while. When the new GameMaker runtime, GMRT, comes out, then the licensing situation will change, and you will have to buy a new GameMaker license for that. I expect that is going to be a source of drama within the community, because it always is, and it probably doesn't help that the GameMaker licensing situation has been all over the place in the last 5 years. I would recommend not panicking too much about that, because again, your current GameMaker license will be good for LTS 2026 until basically the end of time. And if you wanted to, you could just keep using this version of GameMaker for basically ever. Whether or not that's something you actually want to do is a different question. And when GMRT comes out, look, I don't think Yo-Yo Games is going to really be happy about me saying this, but Yo-Yo Games says GMRT is going to be ready in like a year, but realistically, when was the last time Yo-Yo Games actually met a deadline? I'm not really counting on GMRT to be production worthy until maybe 2 or 3 years out from now. And when the time comes to go and like actually start using GMRT in a serious game, then the situation with the licenses should be the same then. You can use it for free until you get to the point where you try to actually make money off a game, at which point you will have to buy a license. But if you're just working on like a free game, or if you're working on producing a free demo ahead of the commercial version of your game, then at that point, you can still continue to use GameMaker for free. It's not until you actually try and sell your game that you actually do need a GameMaker license. I don't know, maybe Yo-Yo Games will surprise me and GMRT will actually come out on time, but look, Yo-Yo Games, I love you, but LTS 2026 was already delayed by like a year, and a lot of other features of GameMaker have also been delayed by like a long time. And I'll start believing the schedule on your roadmap when you actually start meeting deadlines. Anyway, I think that's about it. I'll have links to all this stuff down in the description of this video. My name is Michael, I like wizards and dragons and making games. You should all go check out Wizarducks and the Lost Hat, which is one of the games that I like to work on when I'm not doing YouTube stuff. Link to the Steam page can be found down below. You can go and play the demo, you can go and wishlist it, do all those things, it really helps us. I like to post videos on all kinds of stuff you can do in GameMaker. I usually post tutorial videos and less, like, news journalism, but when something like this happens, I will just report on it. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to subscribe. I have a Patreon, so if you want to contribute to the channel, links to that can be found in all the usual places. Let me know what you all think about this down in the comments. I expect that I will be getting some messages from Linux users regarding the barbs that are through at Linux earlier in the video, but otherwise, I hope you all enjoyed this, and I will see you all later. Special thanks to Zenjamin, Zach Robinson, Squareco, Spydeye Games, Pixelated Pope, Paradox, Nykotic, Manta Ray, GameMaker, GameArt Indie, Edward Holt, DJ Gibbles, Brenton, Bokeh Dev, and Argo the Knot for supporting these videos. If you want to join the ranks of these very cool people, head on down to the Patreon page in the video description to join the fun.